finally got the email and your first interview is booked. But here's the thing. What happens next determines if you move forward or if you never hear back again. So before you start memorizing every bullet point of your resume, let's talk about what really matters in that first screening call and how to absolutely crush it. I'm Jeremy with JobCraft, and I'm able to help many people navigate the current challenging job market with better success and land better jobs faster than they ever thought before. And I'm here to share some good things with you today. Here's the truth. The screening interview is not about proving you can do the job. It's proving that you're worth talking to again. The recruiter's job is to act as a filter and to make sure that they're only allowing the candidates that they feel are most viable into the interview process. What the recruiter is really looking for in the screening interview is clarity, professionalism, and alignment with the role. So let's talk about how you can prepare for the screening interview. Preparation is everything, but don't just rehearse, strategize. Of course, there are many things you can do to prepare for a screening interview, but I'm gonna give you your top 4 that you can focus on to at least get your foundation built so you're ready to go. Number 1 is you're gonna wanna research the company and actually look at the company's most recent headline, whatever headline that may be. You can do a quick Google search, find any news articles that are related to them, and check out what that is. Also, not bad to check out their website, make sure you understand their about page, if they have any kind of core values or anything like that listed, anything key about their culture, try to have a good understanding of that and make sure to jot that down and take some notes. The second one is super important, so please remember this one. You wanna know the job description and know it extremely well. What you're trying to do with this job description and understanding it is you're trying to figure out 2 to 3 themes that you see throughout that job description that you can highlight that relate closely to your experience and skills. Number 3, and this one is super important as well, this is rehearsing your intro, or what I like to call your elevator pitch. Throughout all of the screening interviews I've been part of, whether I was a screener or I've been screened myself, and all of the recruiters that I've spoken with to help me develop my book, there is one common question that gets asked, and it's some type of variation in a screening interview of, tell me a little bit about yourself. Now, this may seem simple on the onset, however, I do see a lot of mistakes made here. In a few moments, I'm gonna be talking about do's and don'ts, and I'm gonna talk about some serious don'ts of what to do here. But for right now, I'm just gonna tell you that this intro needs to be tight. What you ideally wanna focus on is an intro that's around 30 seconds long. So again, you wanna keep it really tight and not too verbose. In that 30 seconds, what you wanna be able to highlight is who you are, what you do best, and why this opportunity excites you. If you can put that in 30 seconds, that's great. And when I say rehearse it, I do mean, if you can, record it, make sure you really tighten it up, and nail this pitch down. You got this. All right, number 4, and this one is also important, but this is setting the stage. So when we're talking about setting the stage, you wanna make sure you have a quiet space to do this interview. Now, I know this might be difficult if you're in like a small apartment and you have other family members or roommates there, or if you're in a type of environment that's just a little bit difficult to do this. I know this can be challenging for some folks, but try to find a nice, quiet space to where there are no distractions that'll be coming through on your audio and nothing to actually get you to look away from the screen or lose focus on the mission at hand. Another part that's really important is making sure that this is a video setting, that you want to ensure your camera angle is right. You've got a good, flattering camera angle that looks good for you. You want to make sure that lighting is okay and that overall your video presentation is solid. A couple ways you can do this is maybe set up your phone to take a video and just see how does the lighting look. Where's the right angle? Where's the best place to do this if you're using that as your device? Maybe if you're using a laptop or something like that, setting that up, maybe even starting your own Google video call or something you can do to be able to see yourself on video and understand, am I putting myself in the best position with this presentation? And lastly on this one is you wanna make sure there are no distractions. I know I kind of spoke about that when I said put yourself in a quiet space, but again, you wanna be focused and you wanna be really dialed in for this interview. This may be your only shot you get with this company, and this is very critical. The screening interview is what lets you into the interview process, so let's make sure you have 0 distractions or limited distractions so that you can do your best and hopefully get to that next round. All right, so I teased this a little bit early in the video, but I'm gonna talk about some do's and some don'ts for the screening interview. Let's start out with a do. Now, the first one, pretty simple, pretty basic, but it still needs to be said. Be on time, and ideally be 3 to 5 minutes early. Something that can create a bad first impression with that recruiter is showing up late to this call or showing up right on time. Now, I know some people say, hey, If I'm on time, I'm on time, I'm good. However, you have no clue who you're dealing with on the other end. Showing up 3 to 5 minutes early shows a good sign of, hey, I'm really taking this seriously. I really want this role. I'm excited about this opportunity. And of course, if it is that crowd that says, if you're on time, you're late, you're passing that sniff test. All right, now let's talk about a don't. And this first don't is a biggie. This is do not ramble or overshare on your career history. Now, I've conducted a lot of these screening interviews myself, and where the biggest challenge is when you say, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself, and then someone automatically starts going into reciting their entire resume and career history. I've seen people talk for upwards of 10 minutes before I cut them off on that very first question. You really want to make sure you keep your answers tight and concise, and I do have some tips for you on that and how you can do it. But again, let's make sure, do not overshare, do not ramble, and do not go too deep into your career history. This is usually a pretty short conversation, and again, they're trying to determine if you're worth talking to again. And although you may have some excellent, incredible accolades to share, let's maybe hold them back for right now. Let's talk about another do. And this one, again, sounds simple, but it's important to implement and execute on. And that is smile when you talk. I'm not saying paste a smile on your face and look like this throughout the entire interview. No, I am saying when you're talking, be smiling. The thing is about this is if it's just a phone interview, they say people can hear a smile through the phone and they can kind of feel that positivity. That is something I could say for the most part is true. That is something that I can say for the most part is true. Also, if you're on video, you definitely want to make sure you project that positive confidence that a smile brings when you're talking. So it's okay to maybe work on your facial expressions and everything. I do, again, recommend rehearsing these things, maybe videoing yourself, answering some questions, maybe some sample questions. But again, smiling while you talk, that's a helpful thing. Let's talk about another don't. Now this don't, again, could be very important for you. And this don't is do not bash a previous employer, even if they deserve it. The reason why I say this is because when you're talking negatively about another employer, it does not typically bode well in these type of recruiting environments. Although what you're saying might be totally valid, I do recommend workshopping whatever you might say about that previous employer, especially if it was a really bad experience for you, so that you can put a better positive spin on it. Maybe saying something about one thing that you learned from this experience without going too far into the negative sphere. There's a lot of things you can do here, but again, pretty simple. Don't bash a previous employer. It just doesn't look good. The next do is keep your answers concise, ideally within the 60 to 90 second range. Now, with these recruiters, especially in the screening interview, they are working through these pretty quickly. Most of these screening interviews are 15 minutes to 30 minutes max, and these recruiters often have a set of questions that they're trying to get through. They want to get through all of the questions ideally, but if you're taking a little bit too long on these answers, they might not get through all of their questions. Also, more importantly, you may lose your audience. If you start rambling for 5 to 10 minutes on the first question, that recruiter may totally disconnect from the conversation, and unfortunately, you won't be making it to the second round. So again, keep those answers concise, ideally between 60 and 90 seconds, and this is, again, something you can rehearse. The next don't is don't ask about benefits or salary too early in the conversation. Again, we're talking about interviewing for a job, and most likely you're getting your job so you can survive. So I am not bashing talking about benefits or salary. You absolutely should be doing that in the process. However, where I see a lot of people make mistakes is they focus on salary and benefits way too early in the conversation, and it tends to make the conversation go a little bit sideways. So make sure you hold that back for something appropriate. A little side tip here, if they ask you what your current salary is, I would sidestep that and kick it back to them and ask, what is the current salary range for this role, if they have not listed it already. The next do is use examples that show results and not tasks. So what I mean by that is when you're using an example, you want to make sure that's something that you have a quantifiable number attached to it if possible. For instance, if you're a salesperson, you can say, well, I did a lot of prospecting and I always made sure to get face-to-face with my clients, and I would update my funnel regularly in Salesforce, and I also made sure that I completed my sales and followed up with my customers appropriately. Those are all tasks, and unfortunately, none of those really hit. However, if you're able to say something like, I was able to increase my quota attainment from 96% in this year to 118% the next year by implementing this strategy, and this strategy, it provides something quantifiable. It shows something that highlights your expertise and highlights your excellence, and it's something that people can stick by. It's important to remember that during these recruiting interviews, the recruiter's often taking notes. So if you're dropping things to them that provide something very tangible, maybe something quantifiable, you're able to share a percentage increase or improvement in something rather than just what tasks you were doing and what responsibilities you held, is going to be something that sticks out for them, something they're going to take note of. And when they're working with the hiring team and they're talking about the candidates that they like most, it's going to help you stick out positively. The next don't I have for you is don't skip prepping for your interview. The main reason why you don't want to skip this preparation is recruiters are pretty astute. They're going to know if you're winging it. And frankly, if they know you're winging it, it's not going to bode well for you in the interview process. All right, and the last do I have for you is do end each answer that you provide with a brief tieback. So what I mean by this is that when you're going through your brief answer that you provide, again, we want to be ideally in that kind of 60 to 90 second range when we're providing these answers during that screening interview. You want to tie something back like, and that's why I feel like I would be a strong fit for this role. Or that's why I feel like I would meet this particular criteria that I found on the job description. Now again, don't say it like that, but you can. You can actually point out something in the job description that relates directly to the answer that you provided, and that tie back could be pretty powerful. All right, now that we've gone through the do's and don'ts, let's talk about something pretty typical that happens during interviews. Interviews typically trigger nerves, and that's normal. So what we need to do is focus on how to keep our energy steady throughout the interview process so we can stay focused and sharp and give ourselves the best confident presentation possible. Okay, so outside of making sure that you're setting the stage appropriately like we spoke about earlier, let me give you a few quick tips on how you can stay focused during your interview. Okay, the first tip I have for you is to keep a note card handy or maybe a note on the screen in front of you that provides 3 bullet points of what you want to make sure that you land during this interview. 3 main points that you're trying to make sure that you hit during this interview. These you can think of as kind of your anchor or your safe space. You know these 3 things are things that highlight your skills, your expertise, and make you a great candidate for the role. So make sure you keep yourself grounded. So if you get a little bit nervous, you can always kind of glance down at that and bring yourself back to what makes you confident and makes you know that you're the best candidate for this job. The next one is you want to make sure that you mirror the recruiter's tone. If they're coming in really fast paced, you want to make sure you stay sharp and you match that pace. If they come in pretty slow paced, you want to make sure you slow down and ease up a little bit. Either way, you want to mirror whatever they're kind of bringing to you. This helps kind of create a bridge in the conversation and helps them understand you better because you're communicating in their style. This is something that can be very helpful for you. The next tip I have for you is to just simply pause before answering. The funny thing that happens when you give yourself just 2 seconds to pause and kind of process things before you answer the question is that it actually shows confidence, not hesitation to the recruiter. So give yourself a few seconds to pause before you answer the question. Okay, the next tip I have for you is a little bit specific to situational questions. So I want to give you a little disclaimer. Not every screening interview is going to include situational questions. So depending on the type of questions you're getting, this may not apply. But if you are getting a situational question, something to help keep your answers concise and tight is to follow a very simple format. What you're going to follow is a short acronym, SAR or SAR. SAR stands for situation, action, and result. So what you're doing when you're providing that short, tight, concise answer is you're walking them through what the situation was, what action you took, and what the result was. A little bit of a side note on this one, it's very helpful for you to kind of list out some things that you know were very positive experiences or very good learning experiences that may relate to some of these questions you might receive during the interview process so that you have some stories on tap that you can share, you can even practice and rehearse it before you get there. Okay, so the last tip I have for you is for you to remember that you're interviewing them too. The importance of remembering that you're interviewing them too is that your time is extraordinarily valuable. And even though you might be getting moved forward in this interview process, if there's too many red flags and too much that you see or hear that does not make it sound like this job is the right one for you, maybe don't waste your time and focus on more high priority, high value, and closer fit roles that are gonna be better for you in the long run. With this screening interview we're talking about, hopefully you've started strong, you've followed the tips, and you've done well so far, but now it's time to end strong and set yourself up for success and set the proper expectations going forward. With these interviews, I've seen a lot of people make a similar mistake when it comes down to how they end the interview. Sometimes they simply say, thank you for your time, or some type of variation for that, give a little wave goodbye, and they're gone. That's really not the best way to do it. We want to make sure that we end with purpose and we end confidently, and also we gather as much information as we can before walking away. So here's how we do that. Here's an example of something you can say to end the interview in a strong way. I really enjoyed our conversation today. From what I've learned so far, this seems like a really good fit. Would you mind telling me about what the next steps in the process look like? So what this does, one, it shows a little bit of enthusiasm for what you've discussed. It also kind of expresses your understanding of the role and the alignment that you see there, but most importantly, it asks that question, what do the next steps look like? Ideally, this is what you want to learn from that end question, is you want to learn how and when are they going to communicate with you about whether or not you're moving forward in the interview process. Also, you want to learn about what the steps of the process look like. Are you walking into a 3-step interview process where you're talking to 3 different people, or are you walking into something where you're going to be talking to 15 different people from all across the company before you can even get close to getting a job offer? Different companies have very different interview processes, so it's very important for you to understand this, because if you do move along, you want to have a clear expectation in your head of how this process is going to go, and also when you might actually start the job. Outside of that closing statement, there is a little bit more that you want to do here to make sure you're setting yourself up for success and possibly make yourself stand out among other candidates. So after the interview, you're going to want to send a thank you email within 24 hours. I know that some people feel like these thank you emails just fall on deaf ears, but trust me, there are many hiring managers out there, many recruiters out there that if they don't receive a thank you email, you're automatically blacklisted and you're out of the process. There's a few things that you want to do with this email. I'm going to walk through those right now. The number one thing you want to do with this email is you want to make sure that you're reiterating your enthusiasm for this role and at least one key takeaway from the conversation that you had. That takeaway will help you custom tailor this email to the conversation that you had and should help you stand out. The next thing you want to do with this email is keep it under 5 sentences. You want to make sure it's short, thoughtful, and professional. Getting that first interview is proof that your strategy is working. So let's not lose momentum, because now it's time for execution. Let's make sure you show up confident, clear, and curious. And remember, you're not just trying to get a job. What you're doing is you're showing them why they need you on their team. I know you've got this. I can't wait to hear more about it. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.